Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, pretty good, Alex. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. I'm good. It's been a very good end to the season, and I've also got Brad with me. How are you, Brad?
Good, thanks, Alex, and evening, gents.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a little while since. In fact, I don't know. Have we had you on since the mid-season review, Brad? Is it sort of you're just sort of checking in at the half-season intervals?
Yeah, look, I think probably I'm the one that maybe had the curse on us. I think I was probably on one maybe January, early Feb, but at that
Oh yeah.
stage I was trying not to talk anything up or get too carried away.
Yeah, that was probably our last little blip, and before we went on the 14 game run or whatever it was to finish the season just about undefeated. So, look, it has been a fantastic end to the season. We will talk about that Charlton game. There's not a whole lot to say about it from the point of view that it really didn't matter in the scheme of things. It would have been nice to finish with a win, and I think would have broken our points record as well. But look, just I guess thoughts on the game. Strong lineup from City. I think Honeyman essentially was the only one who you'd say wasn't first. Sorry, who was first choice, who wasn't in the team. White, KLP, Magennis, and Wilkes all starting, so pretty attacking lineup. A bit disappointing to go down 1-0, but Dan, I guess in the scheme of things, it didn't really matter too much.
Yeah, you're right. In the grand scheme of things, it was a bit of a dead rubber sort of match. It didn't really mean anything, and I mean, it didn't mean anything for us. Potentially meant something for Charlton, but after about 20 minutes into the other game, when was it Oxford was up 2-0 or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
already, it was sort of already out of their hands. As it was, they were going to need to win 7 or 8-0 or something ridiculous. So it wasn't really going to happen.
I think I
But
think I saw BBC sort of tweeted out saying, Oxford are winning, so Charlton need to win to have any chance at the playoffs. And then a moment later, they were like, oh, Charlton have taken the lead, but they'd have to score another 7 goals. So I was like, oh, all right, slim chances.
yeah, look, I think was what it was. I think we went out. We did play a pretty strong lineup, stronger than we sort of talked about last week. That we thought, maybe they'd just rotate a bit, let some of those other guys, fringe players, get a bit of glory as well, be involved in this sort of run in. But they didn't. I think Charlton played really well. I sort of, as we expected, they probably would now with Adkins in charge. They've actually have quite a strong end of the season since he's taken charge. So it wasn't surprising that it was a close game, and it probably didn't really surprise me in the end that it was only sort of a goal in it. He normally sets up nice and strong defensively, and and then they created a few good chances. Unfortunately, Greaves pushed that one
Right, he
into
got his
the.
goal. He got his goal.
He I didn't he get another. I think that's his second own goal, isn't
Oh,
it?
actually, you're right. Was it the Ipswich game
I can't
or
remember,
The
but I think
Portsmouth?
he's got
Maybe. Yeah,
another
yeah.
Oggy for us. But yeah, look, Ingram made a good sort of palm out, and it was just unfortunate that Greaves
Mm.
was there to bundle it back over the line. So, but swings and roundabouts. I think at the end of the day, we've come out the real winners.
Absolutely. Yeah, Brad, title winners for City. We haven't had the chance to talk to you about it yet, but what does it mean to be going up as champions and, just bouncing back at the first opportunity?
Oh, look, it says a lot about probably the reasons why earlier in the season we were wondering if McCann was the man for the job. I think those early days we're saying, look, we need a big squad, we need a strong squad. There's lots of games, but in true sort of McCann style, we've had a good squad. We've ground out that many games that, the pessimists amongst us would have thought we would never have got close. But at the same time, we've probably actually put a real foundation together for next year. And I think that might have been the worry about us maybe getting not so much even auto-promoted, but getting through the playoffs and getting promoted. Are we going to then potentially struggle next year? But I think most of the games this season, we would have beaten half the championship clubs this year too. So it does set us up a lot that the basis of our squad for a long season and a tough season was pretty adaptable. Lots of players shown through at different times and probably sort of modelled almost what a perfect season should be.
Yeah, Definitely. You touched on the need to have that strong squad, and we definitely saw that around 30 minutes in when Elder went off with his injury. And look, fingers crossed that he's okay. We've been talking him up for potential Socceroos inclusion, so hopefully that's nothing too serious. But we saw Josh Emmanuel come on, who's been sort of the forgotten man this season after such a fantastic start to the season. And he just reminded everyone of just what a good player he was when he came on, I thought, with his inclusion.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, he's in most teams' first 11. And the fact that he's sitting on the bench for us is probably what I'm actually reasonably... I mean, it's great to win the league, but then we start thinking about next year and you start thinking, well, you've got to have that depth. You've still got to have quality from players sort of 15 to 30 in the squad. And gee whiz, we've got a couple of stars in our team that we don't really know we've got until we see little episodes like that.
Yeah, definitely, Dan. It's good to see Emmanuel get on. I think we also saw a couple of subs laid on, a few other players getting on the pitch as well. Is it Harry Woods, I think, got on for his City debut as well. So that was great to see as well.
Yeah, I think as you guys touched on with Emmanuel, came on, almost straight back to his barnstorming best. A couple of big runs, shrugging off defender after defender, and a couple of nice silky footwork and some nice moves put on Charlton. But I think nice to see, another debut from a young City player who I think pretty much straight afterwards then went on and signed a contract extension with the club. So
good day for him.
Yeah, really good day for him. Sort of good day all around, really. I think one thing that I just was thinking about while we've been talking about this season as a whole and in preparation for next year, and like normally, like it's a team they'll focus on making their home ground the fortress, and that always seems to be the big sticking point, and yet a big focus or a focal point. What really impressed me was how many away points we picked up, right? Because it's while we sort of did seem to struggle a little bit at home, we by far, we picked up so many points away from home that we showed how fearless we were throughout so many times throughout the season. We went on and attacked everyone, and that was I think that was something that surprised me with how well and then how many points and how many wins we were able to get away from home. It would have to be we would have been top of the league in away points collectively.
I think so.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
it's a good point because
sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's a good point because I think it's easy. I think a lot of people would say, teams, it's easier to win away because there's no fans and COVID and blah blah blah. But the fact that we're the best team away kind of says that okay, yes, but out of everyone plays away. Out of everyone, we still actually ended up being the best, which is a great record.
Yeah, I think the fans out of the stadium has been a bit. It's been sad, but perhaps it was blessing in disguise. But I think there's no real way to know for sure how it just becomes a big hypothetical mess about would we still have won those games if there were fans there. I think potentially there's a few decisions that in crucial moments that a very strong vocal home crowd might turn the referees opinion on or whatever. But I think for the most part we perform strong enough and consistently enough that I don't think it really comes into contention. I guess my main hope is that come next season that fans are back in and we can go back to football as we know it.
Yeah, Brad, I guess on that topic, I mean, the elephant in the room a little bit, I saw it tweeted out the other day by Rick, was potentially City might not have managed to get automatic promotion if there were fans because, their attitude toward McCann, the attitude towards the alums, there might have been, pretty toxic culture or atmosphere in the stadium. Do you think, in a way, that actually not having fans in the stadiums might have helped City sort of, I guess, we went through those ruts, but we were able to come out the other side and then pick up some momentum rather than sort of falling in a heap?
Yeah, look, it's a good one, especially on the home side of things, because we know at times that whilst players or managers might, discount the fact that the home fans booing or calling for the manager out has no bearing on them, but they still refer to it. So I think probably in a little way, maybe if it's 5%, great, it's a couple of points. But I think the away factor was huge. The fact that you're playing away with no no opposition supporters. It takes a little bit of that foreign element out. Most of the time they would have felt like they were sort of on a training ground. And I think it goes back a little bit to the fact that our squad has a really good bunch of not just talented players, but technically good players. And you know what it's like. If you're on a training ground without much distraction, you can really get your skills looking better and sharper than having to be distracted by noise or what someone's yelling over the fence. So I think in a way, I think it benefited us because of the fact that we didn't have those more volatile away situations, and it did maybe the negativity at home, but we'll take it. I just wish maybe even for the last home game, we could have had a full stadium.
Yeah.
That would have been nice. But I think it could have actually worked both ways for us.
Yeah, look, and it's an interesting one. What next season's going to look like with fans back, and I saw someone sort of saying, there's even Premier League clubs, there's a few managers who've not really managed their side with fans in the stadiums. So, in terms of just communicating tactics and stuff to the players on the pitch, it's going to be a bit of a culture shock for everyone. It's been, I guess, 18 months by the time the next season starts, before since we've had fans back in stadiums. So. Obviously, McCann has had city sides with fans in stadiums, but it will be a bit of a shock for players. And fingers crossed we can get a filled out KCOM for at least our first home game, and then hopefully through the season as well. To sort of these players who've you think back to the early days under Brown, and even before Brown, we were signing players who were coming to a big club. We had the new stadium, and it was sort of seen as a big club in League One and League Two, where we were filling it out and getting over 20,000 at games. And these players signed for us in League One, but we were a big club in League One, and we want to be able to show them that with full ground for the championship season.
Mate, I agree, and in fact, without going off course, the Sunderland syndrome still always echoes every time I look at that League One ladder to think, you talk about big clubs. I mean, they could attract whoever they wanted at any given point in time. But if you can't grind out results midweek away at some of these small clubs or in more sort of hostile areas, then you're not going to get promoted. And have a look how many draws they had for the year. Yeah, they've got everything they want. Training ground that would match, if not better, some Premier League clubs. But it gets back to those, midweek, tough, boggy, wet conditions where you've got to be able to grind out a result and not just 15 draws or 17 draws or whatever they came up with.
Yeah, and I saw the comment not only about the playoff places. We've got Blackpool, Sunderland, Oxford, and Lincoln in the playoffs. Yeah. But even looking ahead to next season already, you've got Bolton coming back up from League Two. You've got a couple of big clubs, Sheffield Wednesday dropping down from the Championship. It's going to be a crazy League One season next year. So certainly sort of relief at the fact that we've managed to get back out of it at the first time of asking. Because as you say, clubs like Sunderland, you can end up getting stuck in there quite easily, and it becomes quite tricky to get out of.
It's almost like somewhat of an escape.
Yeah.
I think something that may have actually worked in our favour is that our squad at the end of last season, as terrible as it was and how poorly we ended the season, wasn't like there was no big name because we'd been in the Championship for a couple of seasons. There wasn't any really huge names. Didn't Sunderland, they went from Premier League, Championship, League One. They just were successive relegations. So they probably still had some quite big names, and then you start leaving these big holes as you go down each division.
Well, even now they've still got McGeady, who was
I
think he was a Premier League signing for them. Yeah. So they've still got a few of those big wage earners as well.
Which I think is something that potentially can has a big impact if you do still have those big wage earners, even if you've got those clauses in place that that their wages are reduced to some degree. That still takes up a big chunk of your wage bill, and when you're down there, then you're less likely to want to spend that extra. You want to try and keep your budget under control, so you becomes a bit of a balancing act. And I think by us not having any of those huge money earners or huge names, and we sort of just let a few go, and we brought in and we recruited pretty well for that thing that for this season, that the whole scenario sort of worked out pretty tidily, really. And as you guys said, League One can be a bit of a trap if you can't manage to get out. And so I think we've done exceedingly well to escape at the first time of asking, and I'm looking forward to next season in the championship.
Yeah, I had an Arsenal mate who came out for the Lincoln game and was sort of asking, because he hasn't watched City for a couple of 3 or 4 years now, so they're saying, what players do you have? Would I know any of the names? And I was like, well, actually, no, you wouldn't really know any players in the City side, but I think the positive way to spin that is, they're players that will, I'm sure there's handful, if not more, players in our squad who'll end up in the Premier League, either with us or with other sides. You just look at, Josh Emmanuel, Lewis Potter, Wilkes, Honeyman, maybe Doherty as well, all players who have that sort of Greaves as well, who have that quality, who can make that step up through the divisions with a bit of experience. So it's a young, hungry squad, and I think, as you say, in a way, the drop from the Premier League to the Championship, and then the 3 seasons in the Championship before dropping to League One, we did shed those big money earners in probably, it probably ended up being in a positive way. I mean, it means that we've pretty much rejuvenated the squad now, and whilst it's as if we're coming up as a League One club coming into the Championship, we do still have those finances of a Championship club, rather than, we're not a Rotherham or someone going into the Championship. No disrespect to Rotherham, this first name that came to mind, but there's sorts of you get those sort of yo-yo League One clubs that pop up into the Championship for a few seasons. But we've sort of managed to rejuvenate the squad.
You could have told your mate, you could have told your Arsenal mate Alex that no one knew our players when we turned them over at the Emirates. Time either, so that's okay.
And he was one of my mates who was there for the FA Cup final, so he is well aware of what City can do to Arsenal.
Yes.
So it's good fun. Hey, look, I'll give my 3-2-1 votes for the game, and then we'll move on to talk about some broader season memories. So I've gone for Emmanuel for the 3, just the romantic in me sort of saying it's the last chance that we got to see him in the season. And he put in a fantastic display coming on for Elder. So he got the 3 votes for me. As Daniel was saying, he put in a few really good displays to remind us of his talents as well. So, looking forward to seeing, hopefully we can find some way to fit both him and Coyle into the starting 11 next season, but we'll see what happens. I went Doherty for the 2 votes. I thought he was probably the main man in the midfield. I thought he was creating a lot there for us. And then Coyle for the 1 vote. I thought Coyle flexibility, moving over to the left to fill in for Elder as well, was good of him and worked well. So that was my vote. So what did you think, Dan?
It's sort of it's hard to argue with those. They're probably the 3 standouts. Not that anyone played particularly poorly, but I think that those were the 3, and for pretty much the same reasons you've given, that they stood out sort of above everyone else. We didn't play poorly, but we didn't play great. We just sort of were going about our business. It's sort of, I think it's a hard one to pick out sort of many people who really stood out. I can't really remember like Magennis or KLP or Wilkes doing anything particularly, or White even for that matter, anything particularly noteworthy or outstanding. They just sort of were doing their thing, but without any finish. I think that would be the only thing that would have changed it. If someone could have scored a goal, they would have probably got some points.
How about you, Brad?
Yeah, I'd echo all of that. I think probably, if that first shot on that break goes in, then we look a better team. We probably run over them, and the votes could have been 6 or 7 blokes. Probably actually it was a good sign. Although we lost, we all know mentally we probably weren't necessarily there to win the game. But I still like the fact that we didn't have anyone on that pitch that looked out of place. And in a losing game, you know what I mean? You start analysing where your problems are. And we still didn't look like a team that was getting overrun or had problems. We just looked like a team that maybe couldn't stick one of those first 2 or 3 shots in. And I think it looked a pretty even match, to be fair.
Yeah, and look, and I'll say, I mean, the one name that we haven't really talked about, Slater, I thought had another fantastic game in midfield as well. I thought he's certainly one that I'd be very keen to sign on a permanent next year if we can do that, because he's really proven his worth in the second half of the season. That would be a great one to see. And I don't know if you guys caught it, just going back to Emmanuel and Coyle, I don't know if you caught it when after the match they were doing the trophy presentation and then getting photos with the trophy. And I think at one point it was Coyle and Emmanuel who got called up to take a photo together. And I think it was Wilkes who yelled out something like, "They hate each other," as like a joke. Because it's clearly this thing where it's like they're competing for this spot, and it's almost the fiercest competition for a spot in the whole side. And it's just funny to sort of see that, yeah, obviously that they get on quite well, but it'd be such a tough thing to be sort of competing with somebody for a spot where, as we're sort of saying, they're both such high quality players, and it's such a tough one.
Yeah, I didn't watch the presentation, so I assumed you were going to say they both went to the right-hand side of the trophy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of Coyle, potentially, moving on, we'll talk about some of our highlights for the season, and I thought I'd get each of your favourite goal of the season to start with. Sort of testing the memory banks here. We'll do goal, then game, then player. So I'll give you guys some time to try and think of some examples that you can think off the top of your head. But maybe putting you on the spot, Dan, I'll start with you for the favourite goal of the season.
No, I did have the sheet up. I had a bit of a sticky beak at it earlier. And when I saw the goal, I still don't think I can get past the KLP, the big run from halfway or inside our half, and then shooting from the edge of the box. I can't even remember who it was against, but I remember the goal.
I think was it Swindon?
It might have, yeah, possibly.
The one where we lost, we ended up losing.
Yeah, I think that we took the lead there. Or
it
was
there, Swindon, and it was a nice sunny afternoon.
Yeah, so that's probably my goal. I think it's that or the Magennis free kick.
Yeah, that was a good one. Brad, what was your favourite goal of the season?
Well, I'm using the term season loosely. Because I'm going to have to go with Coyle's goal in the cup. And it was mainly more because I just didn't think he had it in him. From that distance, that was an awesome hit. So although it's not necessarily a league game, I'm going to run with Coyle in the cup.
Yeah, and look, it was such an important goal as well, winning us that game, coming back from, I think we were 2-0 down in that one, coming back to win 3-2. So, look, that was, that definitely a fantastic strike. I'll go with Elder's goal, and I'm trying to remember who it was against. Was it against? I'm just trying to look it up now. Northampton. It was Northampton, where it was one of those games where it was coming into that final run for title/automatic promotion, and it was one of those games where you're sort of thinking it's, we don't want to slip up. We've just got to get a goal and get into it. And I think it was about 30 minutes in or something, and just blasted into the top corner from outside the box for his first City goal, if you don't mind. So, look, I thought that one was a pretty terrific goal. There's been a few of them, like as you said, Dan, the Magennis goal as well. Doherty scored a great goal against Oxford as well, which was fantastic. Even the Honeyman goal against Wigan to put us up 2-1, where with the Wilkes back heel and then just blasted into the bottom corner. There's been a few this season that have been pretty good.
Oh, that was a ripper. Yeah. That just went along the ground, didn't it?
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was to put us up 2-1 as well, and it was just like, I was just the relief of just seeing the net ripple. It was great. I'll start with you then, Brad, for this one, and thoughts on your favourite game of the season.
Well, it's probably not going to be the most exciting, I would think of, from a end-to-end game, but I remember. I didn't actually watch it live or anything like that, but I remember seeing the result going, oh, wow, we're really in this. And it was when we actually turned Peterborough over a couple of months back away. And I think if I remember, they might have had someone sent off and it got a bit sort of easier for us in the second half. But when I actually watched the game back, it was like, okay, we weren't necessarily the best team on the park. Well, whilst we both had 11 men, it was pretty even. But the fact that it was almost like that night, I could see a bit of a killer instinct. I think we scored not long after the red card and then got another one in the second half. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. This is the team closest to us in the league.
Yeah.
And here we are turning them over on their patch. That's when I probably, to be honest, I didn't really know realistically if we were even going to hold on to an auto promo spot, until I think that night reassured me that, hey, this is genuine.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Dan?
I'm going to take a leaf out of Brad's book from the last round. I'm going to actually the Leeds, that cup game against Leeds, I think is probably my favourite game. For a couple, like I think just we went up against a Premier League side in the cup, albeit not their full strength, but still quite a few players that have gone on to play in the Premier League for them. So and we just showed that we can still match it with the big boys, and I think that was a really good marker for how the rest of the season really went. It was early on. We played a couple of who did we play in the before them in the cup?
Sunderland. My God. Yeah, I think it was Sunderland first round.
Maybe it was Sunderland. Yeah, so I don't know. We just I think we just really turned up. We really put it on, and we were pretty unlucky, I think, not to actually have just won outright without even going to penalties. So I was really impressed with that performance. And I guess the overcoming that disparity between Premier League and League One to win not convincingly, but to win and set ourselves up for a really strong season.
Yeah, look, that's definitely pinched mine. I was going to talk about that Leeds on. I think that was an awesome game. It's that playing against a Premier League side, not only matching them but actually bettering them. And I think we were very unlucky not to just win the game outright. I think it was Alioski scored right at the very end to take it to penalties. But Wilkes scoring the goal early, we were basically all over them for most of the game as well, which was fantastic and good for the banter. But that was a terrific game. I guess if not that one, I'll probably go with the Portsmouth 4-0 game where as you were talking about it earlier a bit, where they'd beaten us 2-0 with the 2 own goals in the previous game, where it was when we were starting to stumble and question marks were sort of being raised, and convincingly won the return game in that one 4-0. So sort of similar to what Brad was saying about the Peterborough game, this was another one of those games where you sort of felt that, oh, hang on, we might actually make something of this season and actually show that we're the best side in the division, which ultimately we ended up doing. But that Portsmouth game was, I think, a big turning point for City, or at least it was one of the big turning points in terms of mentally accepting that we are one of the best teams in the division, and that's the standard that we should be setting in our games.
Yeah, I think so. Just on that, I was just thinking about it, and it reminded me of all those moments throughout the season where we were on top or we were first or second, but we had the games in hand, and everyone kept going, oh, well, they've 2 or 3 games, 2 or 3. Oh, so everyone else had the games in hand. We were, had games played, points on the board, and everyone was going, oh, well, the Lincoln's only a point behind, and they've got 3 games in hand, so City's going to fall out of there, and and I guess as points on the board is proved to be the important factor, and we just went from that game. I'm pretty sure just then put it all together, and strong finish, and ended up on top. So
yeah, definitely. And then I guess the last one, I'll start with you on this one, Dan. It's favorite player. So it's not necessarily the player you thought was the best, but the player that you enjoyed watching the most, or the player that you enjoyed the most this season. Yeah.
This one actually wasn't too hard for me. I sort of looked at it, and I didn't have to think long. And I think I talked him up pretty early before he even really settled into his stride. I was really a big fan of the runs that he was making from the midfield through into the channels to support the attackers, and he was really busy and doing a lot. And then he started to nick a couple of goals and get some assists. So my favorite player to watch this season has been Doherty.
Good shout. Yeah. What about you, Brad?
Well, look, I probably didn't pick, say, the best player, and I really like the fact that Dan's gone with Doherty because it means I can go someone else now. But what I've done is same thing as what Dan said. When we look back at early doors in this season, I think he had a couple of injuries, and there was weeks where he was out, and we didn't look quite the same. But when Honeyman returned and looked with the long locks flowing, like he was just happy to be there, commanding it. The guys around him really sort of loved playing alongside him. And then the fact that for the same reasons with Doherty, those runs, those goals, the important goals, I wouldn't say he's technically our best player, but there is no doubt when he's in our team, either the players around him lift or he lifts them. And I just felt like he was almost a bit of our charm in that second half of the season. I don't know how many games he would have missed in the second half of the season, but I would hate to think of how many games he didn't play when we lost or dropped points earlier.
No, definitely. And, you know, talking about his long hair, I still find it pretty crazy when you look back at the pictures of him from early last season when he had the sort of the crew cut, almost very short hair, you know, shaved face. And he's basically, he's enjoyed lockdown life, I think, in that way. hasn't tied it up too much.
Yeah. Definitely.
Just to support Brad's comments on Honeyman, I think they came out when he missed a Charlton game with his foot injury, and they said he'd played the last 2 or 3 games with injections and strapping and all sorts of things, that he'd actually played a couple of really important games and made some really important contributions, you know, on an injury. So I think that is testament to the kind of player he is as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, you know, he was joining in the trophy celebrations, hopping on one foot as well. So that was pretty great to see. My favorite player, it's the name I've got on the back of this shirt, and it's Josh Emmanuel. I think both in terms of just surprising me with, you know, when we signed him, I to be honest, didn't give it a second thought. I thought, you know, oh, we've just picked up a player for free from Bolton who've been relegated. He's just there as depth. He might get, you know, a handful of appearances and then we'll be here for a couple of seasons and we'll probably move him on for free when his contract runs out. And he just started the season so well. And he was in the team on merit. He was delivering week in, week out for us. And as we've already talked about earlier in the episode, coming onto the pitch for Elder during that Charlton game, and he just reminded everyone of what he offered to that side. And, you know, it's no slight on Coyle, who I think's had a fantastic second half of the season and has definitely been one of our standout players as well. I just think that the flair that Emmanuel's able to play with, you know, in that Charlton game, he had a passage where he picked the ball up in you know, the back pocket and basically weaved his way through 3 or 4 Charlton players. Just that sort of tenacity to take on the game and take on the opposition, and seemed to have a motor that he just was running all day. You know, it was fantastic to see, and he's really you know, a joy to watch. I sort of raised the idea, and I get your thoughts on this just before we sign off. But I mean, we sort of saw McCann toy with it a few times of potentially playing Emmanuel up on a wing to kind of accommodate both him and Coyle in the same side. Do you think it's an option that we might see a bit of next season, or do you think it's probably a bit too cute at championship level, Dan?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. Not sure. Look, I think it'd be worth a punt at least once or twice. I think you know, his pace and power, and he is still quite skillful. I think, you know, I certainly wouldn't like start him there or anything, but, you know, to come on and play the last 20 minutes to give, you know, Wilkes or KLP or someone a rest, I can't see it really being too detrimental. And when you consider that they put him in there ahead of, you know, the actual other forward options that are in our squad, you know, because there's a long list of forgotten names from that department with James Scott and Thomas Meyer and like all those guys who Emmanuel came in essentially as a right back and over, you know, took over them in that pecking order to earn, you know, game time and in that position. So it'd be worth a punt once or twice, and then just see how it goes. If he continues on his trend of, you know, taking to it like, you know, a duck to water, then happy days.
Yeah, no, look, it'll be an interesting experiment. We'll see what happens in the championship next season. But look, you know, thank you both for joining me for this one. We're sort of splitting the end of season review in half, so we'll have Logan and potentially some of the others on a second part to wrap up and also announce our player of the season based on our votes that we've given throughout the season, which will be interesting and exciting to look forward to. But until then, thanks for joining me, Dan.
Not a problem, anytime.
And thanks for joining me, Brad.
Thanks, guys. Awesome and bloody good year.
Absolutely. Fantastic year. So thanks, everyone, for watching or listening along throughout this season, wherever you are. And we'll be back probably maybe in the next week or two with that second part of the review. But until then, come on.